Winawiki, soil scientist at C4ECraft based in Nairobi, Kenya. I also co-lead the Coalition of Action for Soil Health. I am so pleased to welcome you all here today for our session, which is very timely as we kick off week 2 on the global stocktake. This session is about opportunities for strengthening the nationally determined contributions by bringing in evidence, by bringing in soil health, by bringing in nature-based solutions. We have a star-studded panel, actually 2 panels because there's only 4 chairs here. And I'm so pleased to kick us off to talk about what are objectives of this session. And if at any time you see this session going astray, not fulfilling the objectives, just start raising your hand, waving your arms, and say, hey, we're getting off track here. Because these session objectives were a collective effort of the organizers, which include ICRA, WWF, C4ECraft, and CASH. And the first is to showcase examples of successful implementation of including evidence, NBS, and soil health into NDCs. And you'll see perfect examples here from our panelists. We also want to hear how we can strengthen the NDCs so that they're actually attainable. So it's actually something that countries can attain. And that's why we're really pleased to have representatives from Kenya, from the African Union, who will be taking rigorous notes on implementing this. We want to bring together actors from government, research, development to really scale the implementation and the inclusion of evidence in soil health in the NDCs, and of course, garner support. We all need to support countries, but we also need to come together collectively to really make sure the NDCs are something we can be proud of. And I'm coming from Kenya, so we have an ambitious NDC. And I just want to talk about that because we have a really fantastic UK PAC-funded project on nature-based solutions. And I show this because this is a map here that we've produced at ECraft of soil erosion across Kenya. The glaring red and yellow is the hotspots of erosion. And yes, there are a lot of hotspots of degradation across Kenya, and that's why it makes it such a perfect test case for integrating nature-based solutions, soil health into the NDC so that this map goes more toward warmer colors, less soil erosion with these interventions. And this project that we have is about delivering nature-based solutions by addressing, what's that word? Policy, right? Policy, institutional and monitoring gaps for forest and landscape restoration. So what we do at C4ECraft is really about generating evidence and then bringing it to bear on policy and practice. Can anyone from Kenya tell me where this is? Phoebe, where is this? What are these hills? Yeah, it's right next to it. Those are the Taita Taveta Hills. So I show this because it's very important that when we talk about generating evidence, that means we need to get out of the building and into the field. So this is a field team just last month, and that's me there. I look nothing like I do today. Sampling soil. So really reminding us that this generation of evidence is really about getting your hands into the soil, getting your hands around trees to measure them. So we've been doing this and building capacity. And the best thing is, soil health is on the agenda. Does everyone here know that? Soil health was included in the Emirates Food Systems Declaration. It's in the Private Sector Declaration. It's in the Non-State Actors Declaration. Soil health is on the agenda. And the Coalition of Action for Soil Health is really excited about this because we know healthy soil is central to so much. We're at the Climate Change COP. It's also central for ecosystem restoration, biodiversity, food and nutrition security. And these are our goals. And I just bring that up because today we're going to talk about policy. So how can we integrate soil health into policy, not just in the climate change or agriculture domain, but across all of these domains, cross-cutting. And this also requires we fill knowledge gaps and expand research and development, but most importantly, scaling on the ground, and sometimes that needs financial incentives, and even the financial institutions are asking for this evidence. So we have Jack Hannum here from the British Society for Soil Science, and she'll be talking about some of these policy interventions and I love it because it's a soil inquiry in the UK, and as one of these policy briefs. Oh, great, you can't read that. So it's a little bit white. And also with ICRA, we've produced 6 policy briefs, 6 African countries interviewing the committee who made the NDCs and said, why didn't you include soil health? And it turns out there were real reasons. They need concrete evidence to be able to report on it and track it. And this is something that scientists can bring. They also said, we need people who are not in the climate change unit to be part of the negotiation process. Seems obvious, but that is a real ask. So these policy briefs are online, and we're really excited that we're producing some tangible and useful products that can actually help scale and the implementation of the NDCs. So with that, this is our star-studded panel. Half of it is here. I'm really pleased. And I want to give the floor to our co-host. WWF is co-hosting this, and they've given the floor to a Climate Focus to give us a scene setting about the NDCs and maybe any intel on how the negotiations are going with the stock take. Yes, so I'm so pleased to welcome Hasib from Climate Focus to give us this scene setting specifically on the NDCs. And thank you, Ali, for changing the presentation.
Thanks, Lee. 6 minutes, wow, okay. Thanks for the introduction and for that presentation. I'm really happy to be here. Maybe I start with the stock take, what's happening. As we know, we had a new draft. I think the one that I saw came yesterday in the afternoon, and that included agriculture and food in the adaptation section as an option. We don't know if that will make it to the final text or not, but I think a lot of advocacy and push from civil society and some countries made it possible, but we'll see. On the other hand, nature-based solutions, restoration, ending deforestation, other ecosystems, whether it's land-based or marine, they have been included in the mitigation part of the stocktake. But let's hope they all are still there at the end when the final text is decided upon in the next few days. With that, I wanted to introduce you to a website, a tool that includes guidance to enhance NDC ambition and implementation for agriculture and food systems transformation that WWF, Climate Focus, with the support from GIZ and the German government for economic cooperation and development, and with support and advisory support from an advisory group of different organizations, including Global Alliance for the Future of Food, including Agroecology Coalition, BioVision, and GIZ and several WWF teams that started 4 or 5 months ago. And today I wanted to briefly introduce that tool. As I'm sure we all know here, the importance of food systems and food systems mitigation interventions in achieving the Paris Agreement target of 1.5 degrees. It is obviously impossible to achieve that target unless we transform our food systems, because 20% of mitigation potential to achieve that target by 2050 is in the food systems. And as part of nature-based solutions, 80% of potential in nature-based solutions are closely linked to how we produce food and how we transport, sell, and process and consume food at the household level. So we cannot really exclude food from climate action and climate policies anymore. And thankfully, that has been the case. It's not been excluded. We looked at all updated NDC last year, and we saw that food has been included and mentioned in the NDCs in one way or another by almost all countries in the NDCs, from 134 countries, 93% of them included food. But that is just mentioning food in, some policy measure here and there, but the whole approach to developing and implementing NDCs didn't take a food systems approach. A food systems approach means measures and interventions across food systems, from farm to fork, and also enabling policy measures to make that possible. And over the past 3-4 years now, a lot of civil society organizations and UN, like the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and others, have been pushing for including food systems in climate plans and climate policies. WWF and Global Alliance and FAO, we have published many these policy recommendations, and now more specific recommendations coming from CASH and from other initiatives on specific aspects or component of food systems as well. And we have been doing that, and that fortunately resulted in the declaration that you mentioned, Lee, which was adopted on the first day. Although this has been signed by 140 plus countries, it is voluntary. So there is no accountability, there is no such mechanism to make sure that that is delivered upon. Obviously, civil society, including us, can hold them accountable and hopefully can check whether they are really implementing that or not over time in the next few years. To fill this gap in concrete policy options for policymakers and practitioners to implement in transforming food systems across different components of food system, WWF with Climate Focus and other partners came together to create a resource, an online resource that brings together all insights from academia, from science, from policy, and examples of policy implementation put together in one space or one place, and that can allow users and policymakers to search for what they need and what they can implement, what are the benefits of those, and so on. And that's this website or this resource that we call Food Forward NDCs. It will be launched in March next year, or it will be online March next year. Right now we are in the process of finalizing the content. The website will be a very simple website that will have this decision tree approach that allows users to choose in 3 steps the policy intervention area that they want to find guidance for policy implementation, policy measures, and then from there they can take 2-3 other steps and clicks and get the complete guidance. The content of the guidance is grouped into 5 intervention areas: food governance, food environment, food production, food supply chains, and consumption. And the website will have this look. This will be the landing page, and then from there they will have this page, and here they can select in which intervention area they want to know more about policy options, and then they can select one, and that will take them to a list of policy options within that intervention area. Obviously, these are not exhaustive. These are based on the 30 plus options that we have put together now, but this will be a living website and will continue to grow. And here, if they selected food consumption, for example, then the options will will drop down. So reducing food waste in retail, gastronomy, and at the household level, that will be a policy option that they want to implement. And once they select that, then the website, there will be a long page with information grouped or categorized across all these elements, list of implementation measures, so what concrete things that they can implement, what are the benefits of these measures, what are the challenges, externalities, and potential trade-offs of these measures, and how they can address those challenges in the implementation process, and costs for implementing those measures if that information exists in literature already. Then what are some of the monitoring tools that you mentioned, Lee, that they can use in monitoring the implementation, and some concrete case studies of examples of projects and programs on the ground. That's it, and that's the guidance that we have worked on and we are working on. Happy to answer any question later.
Yes, thank you so much. Perfect. Thank you so much, Hasib, for a concrete example of a tool to support NDCs. So now kindly allow me to dig right into the panelists. I hope there's a microphone. Great. So we're going to start with Manuel Jaramillo. He's the director, and I will use my terrible accent, Fundación Vida Silvestre Argentina, and he will explain what that is in English. So please, you first. I would like to give you 4 minutes to share with us specific examples of how your organization is implementing on the ground soil health, nature-based solutions, and policy and practice in Argentina. And perhaps you could focus on savannas, livestock, also a very important initiative. Manuel, please.
Thank you, Leite, and thank you all to be here. I write down some specific words to be try to use in the better way my 4 minutes. Obviously, when we talk about soil conservation, we are about healthy soils, and we talk about healthy soils, and it is nature, it is biodiversity. You know that the soils is more than the physical support for plants. And for that reason, Fundación Vida Silvestre Argentina and YouthWave is working in nature-based solutions to preserve the nature into the soils. And in our country as Argentina, soils is very important to develop the main activity of our country, that it is the agricultural and livestock. And in that way, the National Plan to Mitigation and Adaptation to Climate Change include almost 3 measures very important for us. One of these is improve the livestock efficiency. We are trying to get more beef with less cows and with less area. And obviously, we are promoting the regenerative and agroecological livestock into the NDCs, and the practice management to avoid the erosion, mainly hydric and aeolic. And in that way, Fundación Vida Silvestre has working for several years, maybe more than 20 years, with producers, with the authorities, to promote the sustainable livestock, mainly on pastoral systems, considering that the heterogeneity of the environmental is the best way to use the grasslands. It's important to remark that in our country, we lost almost 65% of the natural grasslands in the pampas. Maybe you know about Argentina, you know about the beef in Argentina. The typical beef from Argentina came from pampas. This is the real Argentinian beef. But we are losing its area because it is transformed mainly for agricultural activities. And the change into the productive system of our beef is changing our beef. Or the Argentinian beef is losing because the practice is losing too. And in that reason, we are promoting the control and grazing. We are trying to avoid the use of open grass, that it is easy to overgrazing. And the technologies try to maximize the conversion of cellulose to meat, and minimizing the use of grains into the livestock process. We try to avoid the use of grains because it's compete with the human alimentation, and it promotes a big-scale transformation of our lands. And for that reason, we mainly support the sustainable use of pastures to try to maintain the soil covers and decrease the bare soils and increase the brush. And obviously, its practice already implemented demonstrate that it is a reduction of the weeds and reduction of creeping grass, and the increase of grass and higher forage value quality, both in summer and in winter. It's important the use of sustainable grassland, sustainable native, the sustainable use of the native grasslands is a kind of adaptation practice. It reduces the impact of the climate change and it's more resilient for the production. And the other issue is the increase of the valuable native species and existing seeds into the soil. And when you maintain the controlling grasslands, you could promote the native species that it is still alive into the agricultural systems, the livestock systems. Near to final, we are increasing the ecosystem services. Using its kind of use of grasslands, we could get more alternative for pollinators, and the resilience of stream water and the carbon fixation is better. Sorry, and there is another important topic about its kind of grassland activity or livestock activities is use less fuels. We use more technology or more process than products and than fertilizers or agrotoxics. And yes, the most only 2 points. In 5 years, starting for the continuous grazing, that it is not sustainable, we reach 50% more of production. We gain 42 additional kilograms per hectare per year using only fences and technology and training for cattle ranchers. And obviously, it's implied better economic result and stability and the less dependence of external factors. Sorry.
Oh, thank you. Great. Thank you. No, thank you so much for bringing in practical examples on the ground. And also you mentioned communities and government. And I think that's a really perfect segue for Jack Hannum to come in. And I would like to ask you about your policy work, and please say soil inquiry as many times as possible and tell us what that is. And what is some of the policy work led by the British Society for Soil Science and specific outcomes and action next steps? Over to you.
Great, thanks very much, Lee. I'm Jack Hannum from the British Society of Soil Science. We're a membership organisation of scientists, but also practitioners working with soils on the ground as well. And we've been doing a number of things interacting with policy, and a big thing that's been happening in the UK this year is a soil health inquiry in Parliament, in the government. So there are a number of committees that exist across the different political parties that can call the government into account for various things. And they announced an inquiry into soil health this year. There was one in 2015, and there hadn't been much action from the reports from that. So they called another inquiry in 2023. And this is a public consultation, so anybody can submit evidence. So you submit written evidence to specific questions that they're asking, essentially about our knowledge about soil health in the UK, what we can do, whether there are particular policies that enable people on the ground to implement soil health. So we were invited to give evidence then in Parliament itself. So there's a second phase to the inquiry, which is going to the Houses of Parliament. So you may know the iconic building of Big Ben. It's quite intimidating going into this building. It's set up a bit like that to give inquiry essentially to the members of Parliament that are part of the committee. So they're then trying to ascertain a little bit more detail about some of the evidence that we were submitted from the society. A lot of our members also were also called to the inquiry to give evidence about specific areas of expertise. So what happened? So there's a big bunch of evidence, and essentially the committee then are holding the Department for the Environment and Rural Affairs to account for their actions for soil health. They published that report this week on World Soils Day, of course. And there's a number of recommendations that come from the evidence there. So our main evidence was really pushing for a systematic framework for soil policy in the UK. It's very fragmented. It exists in loads of different policy areas, and it's really difficult to see the ambition of government for soil health specifically, because it's included in lots of other things. So what we're doing to follow up on the report that got published is to see where the ambition is. There is still no call for an overarching framework, so that's something that we want to push going forward. We also want to look at monitoring, verification and reporting. So there is a national monitoring scheme that is being launched to look at our national contributions to soil health, but we really also need information on the ground at a local level so that we can actually inform farmers and landowners on specific actions that are applicable to them. One other thing that, as well as the inquiry, we've been interacting a little bit more. So again, it's about evidence. So bringing evidence directly to policymakers. So last year we hosted an international Soils Conference, the World Congress of Soil Science, and we hosted that in the UK. And it was the first time that we had a dedicated session for policy, with policymakers in the room with the scientists talking about the sorts of evidence that they need. And we are following up on this in some of our annual conferences, which happened at the beginning of the week. So we're having dedicated sessions where we can interact directly with policymakers, inviting them into the room so that we can interact with them and our members can provide that evidence directly. And this has been facilitated essentially by secondments and interactions of scientists going into government, into the evidence teams to actually embed that knowledge into developing policy in the UK. So that's it from me. Thanks.
That's amazing. It's so inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. And really, it's motivating for scientists as well to know that all of this hard digging will go somewhere, that data will go somewhere. And I'm so pleased to introduce our next panelist. And I just also want to point out that any panel that the Coalition of Action for Soil Health has had has always included youth. We can sit here and talk to ourselves, which we do a lot of, but it's the next generation that is going to take this forward. And I'm so pleased that Prem Prakash is here. He's the vice president of IAAS World, and he will tell us what that is. And so you've heard 2 presentations, 2 speakers. Please share with us the role of youth in policy. What is the message you would like us to hear, presidency to hear in terms of engaging youth in policy? And please tell us what IAAS is.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, hi everyone. I'm Prem, and I'm basically from Nepal, and I'm the Vice President of Action Relation of EAS. Basically, EAS is the International Association of Students in Agricultural and Related Sciences. We are the largest association in the field of agriculture and related sciences, over 10,000 members all around the globe, with 53 locations. We are over 53 countries, and we are more focusing on the advocacy, like aspirations and actions. So I'd like to highlight the role of youth in policies and practice in 3A, that might be AAA, aspirations, advocacy, and actions. From the aspiration part, like youth bring fresh perspective, innovative ideas, and the deep desire for the change, for the soil health, and for the healthy, fostering the long-term vision for sustainable agriculture. So we are working for the aspire part. We are aspiring young people to join the COP and UN events. So next one is advocacy. We have our independent committee, Food and Agriculture Youth Institute. We are working independently for the position paper and policy papers accordingly. So we can prioritize soil health. We can prioritize the community engagement over there. We are not focusing on the global level. We are also focusing on the local levels, local lead solutions, lead by the youth and for the communities, right? So next one is we are raising awareness on the soil health, and also I will highlight some examples. In Nepal, we have some soil campaign. We test soil and suggest farmer to recommend the fertilizer dose and other things. Also same like as Peru, we have soil campaigning. We have community engagement. We train farmers for the vegetations, training on vegetation, green vegetation over there. Also we focus on the soil good health, better soil health for the better peoples and better living. So third one is actions. Basically, as the largest student association in the field of agriculture, we are working on the actions part. So we have more than 40 projects on the ground. We are working on the grounds with the youth peoples, for the peoples and for the communities. So we are also actively engaged on the NDCs, also actively engaged the UN policies, and also the negotiation and interventions. We are following every UN events like Ulfa Forum, also COP and SB. So for the actions part, we are looking for the tangible improvement from the youth side also. We are the future generation, but we have to contribute now for the futures, because we are still working for the futures, and we have to contribute from now. It's might be delay for futures, so we have to act from now. For those, I have some examples of my association. First one is Nepal. I already highlighted we have soil campaigns over there. We suggest farmers to have the better soil, to test soil for the recommendation dose of fertilizer and other things for the inputs. So next one is we have BCP's Village Concept Project to uplift the communities of Peru. So in that we train farmers in the healthy vegetations, and also like doing soil campaigns, like doing soil sampling also, and focusing on the soil health, healthy soil and healthy people. So these are the things. So in short, in conclusion, the role of youth in policy and practice will be in three. That might be aspire, and then advocacy, then actions. Thank you.
I must say, I feel inspired. Can we give him another round of applause? I was an active youth, but I don't think I was quite as sophisticated and as articulate as you are. This is really inspiring. And I loved what you said, deep desire for change. And then acting now for the future. That's very powerful. Thank you for sharing those messages. And I'm so pleased. Rachel had many invitations for this exact time slot. So I'm really pleased that she highlighted our event, because as you saw, we're really trying to highlight the engagement of FCDO and UK PAC funding on this topic. So please, Rachel, I'd like to ask you to give some examples of how FCDO is, and your work with the policy dialogues is really trying to bridge some of these gaps that we've been talking about to make sure that policy is implemented on the ground. And please go ahead and introduce yourself. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Very pleased to be here. I'm Rachel Waterhouse. I lead what's called the Sustainable Water and Food Systems team at FCDO in the Climate and Environment Department. Bit of an ambitious name. So I mean, I'm really glad that we're here talking about policy, and whatever the technical solutions are. I mean, I think there are many technical solutions, and it's really great to hear the examples that you're bringing. But unfortunately, we know that those are unlikely to be taken up unless we have the right policies in place, both in terms of sort of enabling environment as well as the right kind of incentives to promote soil health and more sustainable agriculture in general. And sort of through the work that we've been doing, I mean, one of the things that we're very much aware of is that current agricultural policies sort of globally are unfortunately quite often have perverse incentives in terms of soil health and land. We know that OECD countries alone have been investing around $800 billion a year in the agricultural sectors, whether that's through sort of direct or indirect support and market price incentives. But quite often that is driving unhealthy practices that are sort of leading to emissions, biodiversity loss, land degradation. So, for example, the focus has quite often been on of agricultural policies and support has been on increasing production or supporting farmers' income, which is great, but without taking into account the environmental outcomes of those policies. So that's why we've been sort of very much focused on looking at what's possible in terms of shifting that public support and the public policies that incentivize both public and private investment into agriculture and into healthy soils. So we've been doing this sort of domestically and internationally. Domestically in England, and I have to say this, I'm sure Jack probably knows way more about it than I do, but we have been shifting from area-based subsidies, which were designed to support farmer incomes but were not linked to production, let alone healthy soils. So we're shifting now to an environmental land management schemes, which are designed to reward farmers for better environmental outcomes. Internationally, so at FCDO where I work, we're working both sort of bilaterally, regionally and internationally, working to promote policy reforms that can help lead to better environmental outcomes. And that includes, so for example, the PACT partnership that Lee referred to. So through PACT, which is Partnerships for Accelerated Climate Transitions, we are working with countries to address net zero outcomes, but also sort of doing that in a way that has people at the center. So we're looking at better outcomes for people, climate, and nature. Through the PACT partnership in Kenya, we're working with C4 and the World Agroforestry to strengthen county environmental governance and forest landscape restoration through improving monitoring and reporting frameworks. And that includes landscape health assessments using the land degradation surveillance framework. And through the sort of land assessments and soil testing, this will support implementation plans for landscape restoration. And I'm sure Lee can probably tell you more about that than I can. But that's just sort of one example from our PACT program. Obviously, countries need to have their own policy approaches according to their context, but eventually this has to be a global shift, which is why together with so we do work at we try to bring together experience as well. We have a Just Rural Transition Support Program where we work together with the World Bank Food Systems 2030 Trust Fund and partner countries with the aim of supporting developing country governments that want to also kind of increase the soil health outcomes of their agricultural policies. Through this program, for example, Malawi is drawing on this program to support reform of its agriculture inputs program with the aim of reducing spend on inorganic fertilizers, which have proved to be expensive and inefficient, and looking at what are their options to sort of shift that program to increase the reward to farmers for soil health and other environmental outcomes. So that includes, for example, promoting the use of an indigenous mix of organic and inorganic fertilizers. And again, that's going to kind of reduce import costs, but it is also have better outcomes for soil health. So we need country-specific solutions, but it's really important to think about a global shift in policy. So together with the World Bank, the UK has co-convened what's called the Agriculture Policy Dialogue. We call it a Policy Dialogue for Transition to Sustainable Agriculture. We began that under our COP26 presidency. It's brought together over 45 countries over the last sort of 3 years to share experience on the kind of policy actions that are helping to drive a shift towards sustainable agriculture. Tomorrow we'll be launching a compendium of the policy dialogue in 2023, which will have a chair's summary of our workshops this year, as well as country case studies, kind of country-authored case studies. That includes, for example, one from India looking at the soil health cards system that they use, but also a short series of policy briefs, again, including one on soil health. Some of the emerging, I'm just finishing, sorry. Some of the emerging priorities for soil health sort of through this process are providing farmers with access to information, technical assistance and finance, but also the importance of establishing and enforcing standards, sort of regulation and standards around soil health, and the question that we've been hearing about monitoring. So moving to sort of agreed metrics for that monitoring is something that's going to be really key, both for integrating into NDCs and more broadly for making sure that we conform with soil health outcomes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much, Rachel, for reminding us of that policy brief that's coming out on soil health. I'm really excited because I know there was a wide consultation on that, and I think the fact that World Bank, FCDO, Just Rural Transition, more people are talking about soil health, Baron, means soil health is on the agenda finally in our lifetime. So with that, we're going to shift panels to an Africa-focused panel. So let's give all of these panelists a round of applause as we transition to our new panel. Thank you so much. And as you know, we started 15 minutes late, so we can go over the hour. So please come fill the seats here and have your questions ready, because we will have questions. So as I mentioned, I work for C4ECRAFT based in Kenya, so I can't help but to have an entire panel now just focused on Africa. But note that I did have diversity in the first panel. So with that, I'd like to start with Laura in the center. So Laura, I showed a slide of some of our policy briefs and focusing on opportunities to integrate soil health, soil carbon into the NDCs as a tangible way for countries to actually achieve some of the targets that they've met. So Laura, please introduce yourself, policy lead at ICRA at ILRI, and tell us your specific engagement with policymakers within the ICRA program. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Lee, and good morning, everyone. So as she said, my name is Laura Kramer. I work at the International Livestock Research Institute, ILRI, and I work specifically on, one of the things I do is on a program called Accelerating Impacts of CGIAR Climate Research for Africa, ICRA. So those were the two acronyms that we said, just to spell those out. And within ICRA, I lead the work on policy. And so like Lee showed, we have done these 6 policy briefs on integrating soil health into NDCs. And I have, I think, 3 main points to talk about around that work and the work that we do in general in engaging with stakeholders and policymakers. So the first point I want to talk about is informing NDCs with your evidence and with kind of the data that we're generating. It really requires close relationships with the government agency leading the nationally determined contribution and the related line ministries. So, the policy brief is great, but it's just a start. So what we need to do now going forward, because countries will be updating their NDCs in 2025, is starting when we get home and in January in the new year, we need to be engaging with those decision makers who will be doing those updates in 2025. Because that's really how we will get the evidence in there and how we will get soil health within the updated NDC. And the NDCs are really important because they guide investments, especially in countries in Africa. Maybe I think in Britain, I love the example of the soil health inquiry, and I think your government probably has ample funding. Maybe it's not a priority, but the money is there. With African countries, we rely so much. I know in Kenya, 87% of the NDC is reliant on external funding. And so to be able to drive that investment in soil health, it needs to be in the NDC to be able to access any sort of funding to create new policies related to it or to just get projects on the ground doing work on soil health. So the first point is about those close relationships that we need. The second point is that conversations getting that evidence into the NDC need to start early and continue throughout. And it's a really engaged process. It's very involved and it takes time and persistence. And that's one of the things I've learned working in ICRA, working with policymakers, is that you need to show up. And we have some other colleagues who say this as well. You need to show up and be there consistently. Inviting them to your meetings is one thing, but showing up to their meetings is something else. And it shows that you are committed to not only driving your own agenda, but contributing to their agenda as well. And so I think that's one of the main things we do to build trust, is to just keep showing up and keep building those relationships. And the other thing I think that's important there is to invite other stakeholders in as well, not just government and research, but getting civil society, NGOs, local research institutes, and others involved in those conversations. And the third point that I would really make, and that's why I really like the LDSF framework and everything else, because we need that locally sourced data and co-developed knowledge projects to be able to feed into the NDCs. We had not an ICRA-related event, but another ILRI-related event recently where some European partners came. They had done some research studies and were presenting to people within Kenya. And it was fairly well received, but then the audience said, well, actually, why don't you come to us? We have better data than the data you've used. And so I think that's another part of having those relationships there, you know, having buy-in from the beginning, saying, hey, you know, we want to help inform this, but what info do you already have and what info do you need and how can we help you generate that, rather than working from the outside and trying to impose something at the, you know, the very end. So, you know, I think, and I love the picture of Lee getting your hands dirty, because, you know, we really need that local data, and it's not free. It costs money. And so being able to drive the investments, not just for the work on the ground, but even generating the data to be able to inform the decisions on what work needs to happen is really important and needs funding as well. So I think those are my key points, and I will stop there. Thank you.
So great. So great. Now we have a unique situation where we're in Dubai, but we actually have 2 people here from Makweni County. This is so fantastic. So I'm really pleased that we have Phoebe Wangangi here from Makweni County, a farmer, and we're talking high level about all of these policies and trying to say that we're on the ground, but we really want to hear your perspective on what this means for farmers. So, Noseo.
Thank you. My name is Phoebe Mwangangi from Makweni County in Kenya, a farmer. I'm so excited to be in this forum talking about soil health, because it's the basis of the farming system we have. There's no farmer without good soil health. And so the farmer is highly dependent on the health of the soil. As a farmer, the soil will dictate the kind of farming I'll do, the kind of produce I'll get, the quantity and also the quality. And so it's very important that we talk about soil health. We've been doing soil health traditionally as farmers, even the smallholder farmers. I remember even when I was growing up, they'll do things like merry-go-round of soil conservation. They'll do terraces. They do it, you know, these farmers' ground one day, the following day they do it on the other farmer's farm. And they will also plant grasses during the rains. And this will be done communally as a merry-go-round kind of an event, happily conserving the soil. But with climate change, many things have happened. The soil health is degrading, and the farmer is not getting enough as it used to get. So what we are doing down as smallholder farmers in Kenya, Makweni County, a very arid area, is that we are trying to adopt some innovations to help increase the soil health, to make the soil produce better. For example, we have seen in the cast about Kenya map, which was placed at the beginning of this event. There's a lot of soil erosion going on, and I saw my place there, Makweni water area, and a lot of red patches showing a lot of erosion is going on. So what we're doing is that as a community, we have these innovations. We have made what we call farmer groups, and we are talking about these innovations in the farmer groups. We're doing what we're going deep tillage, minimum soil disturbance. We don't want to disturb the soil much. We want it to remain intact for some time so that it can regain its fertility strength. We're also doing tillage, we call reaping and manure application. We have collaborated with ICRA. They have helped us to learn these innovations and strengthen also the farmer innovations. You know, the farmer has his own innovations. And now when the ICRA comes in, strengthens these farmer innovations and adds a few more innovations, then we are able to regenerate our soil and the health is replaced. It's my appeal in this meeting that the governments and also other organizations who are making these policies, they'll have the farmer in mind. The farmer is the one who is interacting with the soil. and will be the best person placed to improve the soil health or destroy the soil health. So have the farmer in mind, involve the farmer, get to know what the farmer feels is good. Build on the innovation the farmer has and bring more new ones. Let them be farmer-owned, and the farmer will implement them. Thank you.
Actually, a bigger round of applause. That was absolutely amazing, and I loved how you said happily conserving the soil, farmers. Thank you so much for that message. So I've been told by Louise that even though we started late, we only have a few more minutes. So, Manyewo, we've heard policy, global, we've heard from the farmer, you're representing the African Union, you're talking about a soil initiative for Africa. What are your words of wisdom? What do you want the audience to hear?
Thank you very much, Lee. After Phoebe, I'm thinking we might as well just close the session.
Totally.
She's already told us exactly what we need to know. And I can only reiterate what she's already said. Just to say that, in the beginning, Lee, you mentioned the fact that finally we have soil health on the agenda. I can also just reiterate the fact that for Africa, it is also a tipping point in that sense, because finally soil health is on the agenda, and it's getting the attention, the necessary attention and political support that I believe is required if we are to make the kind of difference that we need at the kind of scale that we expect. And I'm also very glad that the focus for this conversation has really been on, the action side of things, because, there's been quite a bit of work done on what needs to be done and why it needs to be done, but the how part of how do we get to where we want to be has been really the missing piece. And I'm really glad to see that we're starting to see very solid examples, robust approaches, and learning from farmers in terms of what needs to be done and how to make it work. And I'm really happy. Many of you would know that next year the African Union is convening the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit, and it's happening in Kenya, to be honest. I don't know whether it's I don't know whether it's coincidence that we have a Kenya-led movement here, but I think it's a fitting location for that summit. Essentially, it's a continental gathering that really looks at galvanizing action on soil health. Eventually, after many years of trying so many things, we've really come to the realization that if we are to transform our food systems on the continent, it will have to start from the ground up. We'll have to deal with soil health. And if we don't get that right, we might as well forget about transforming our food system. So, I'm very happy about that. And finally, we're seeing a lot of momentum in terms of realizing that many of the solutions that we would need will also, of course, we're looking at nature-based solutions, but they also need to be locally driven, solutions. So they will have to be locally relevant and locally exciting solutions as well. So in terms of the incentive systems that we bring on the table, they will need to involve local people. They will need to ignite the passions of young people in local areas. It needs to, to incentivize utilization of local resources, local materials that are found, within communities that farmers are living. So I think we really have solid examples in terms of what works. And, the kind of work that we're doing as the African Union is really around, supporting, that kind of movement at the kind of scale that we think we require to make a difference as a continent. And I think we're on the right track. We've started really well, and I look forward to the next couple of months and years, because we have very solid support and partnerships, across the board, with very key partners that are really bringing, the solutions that we need. And I think we're onto something, and I'm excited about the next steps that are coming out. Thank you, Liv.
Wow, magnifico. So at C4ECRAFT, we always say locally appropriate, site-specific. Now I'm going to quote Manyewu, locally exciting solutions. Thank you, Manyewu. So with that, I thought we had more time for questions, but we are going to have a conversation over croissants in the back. And Louise, no closing remarks, or you want to make closing remarks?
It was really exciting, and I'm sure I would have said something really, really inspiring. But yeah, to steal another analogy, if we're on the agenda, we're in the car's moving, let's not take our foot off the accelerator. Now we've started to move, right? So let's keep the pressure on. The next session here in this pavilion is about financing in Africa. So following on from the exciting Africa panel, take a croissant, take a coffee, come back, and let's talk about how we're gonna inspire soil health and then find the money to make it happen. Yeah? All right, everybody, thank you so much. Cheers.
This session is officially closed. Thank you for joining online. Thank you for joining here. Woo! Thank you.